Well, we're coming to you from the Wyoming Stockgrowers Convention in Cody this week, taking the Next Year Country podcast on the road. Quite a bit of fun for us here. Colter Brown here from the Northern Ag Network, and I'm joined by Andy Schwab. And today we're going to get to hear from a couple of Wyoming ranchers about just how 2026 is shaping up, talk about some of the big issues in the industry, and give you an idea for what's being discussed here at the Wyoming Stockgrowers Convention. So thanks for joining us here on Next Year Country. It's going to be a fun episode. Well, today's episode is sponsored by BNSF Railway. They continue to invest in their rail network, maintaining tracks, upgrading crossings, and improving safety so farmers can rely on efficient grain transportation to the markets. We appreciate BNSF's support, and with that, we're here at the Wyoming Stockgrowers Convention in Cody. My co-host Andy Schwab joining me here.
Good day to be back in the stomping grounds, that's for sure. Of course, many of you know I grew up 30 miles east of here in Powell, Wyoming, so good to be back in the old rivalry of Cody, Wyoming, and see some old friends, but also some friends that we've gained over the years of being with the Northern Ag Network and Wyoming Stockgrowers and the partnership that we've had over the years with that. But I think it's 154 years for Wyoming Stockgrowers this year.
And that's what I heard.
That's impressive. Wow.
Well, and folks aren't listening today to hear from us, really. They want to hear the podcast debuts of a couple of our guests here. So we're very excited to have Nate Kane joining us from Sheridan. Nate's the chairman of the Young Producer Assembly. Nate, have you done a podcast before?
I have never been on a podcast before. I'm brand new to all this.
Well, and we appreciate Nate because he allowed us to turn his daughters into billboards today with our Northern Ag Network stickers, so that was kind of fun.
They're always pumped to get stickers from anybody and whoever will hand them out.
Yes.
Well, and also sitting next to Nate here is Jim Wilson. He's past president of the Wyoming Stockgrowers from Thermopolis. Jim, I'm sure you've been on a couple podcasts now.
Yes, I have, and they've always been enjoyable, and it's good to have input from you as well as from us as stockgrower members.
Well, we appreciate you being here and doing this with us. And then last but certainly not least, Joe Crofts from Riverton, who's the outgoing Region 5 Vice President. Joe, I think everyone's excited to hear the wit and wisdom from you today.
Oh, I got some wisdom for him, and I guess I'm like Nate. This is my first podcast, too, so we're going to do a good job and have a good time.
Yes.
Well, we, like I say, appreciate you guys being here. And to start us off, I thought maybe just have you each tell a little bit about your operation, where you're from, what things are looking like this year. I mean, one thing's for sure, as you go across the region, things are vastly different over sometimes a short amount of area. So Nate might start with you.
Yeah, Nate Kane. I'm the current Young Producers Assembly president that goes along with the Wyoming Stockgrowers. I'm a fifth generation rancher out of the Sheridan area. We're northeast of Sheridan, west of Sheridan, north of Sheridan, but mainly a lot of cow-calf. We the past 5 years we've been retaining all of our yearling heifers, keeping our own breds, selling some breds. That's kind of the ins and outs, and trying to grow a little bit of grass in between for them. So that's kind of what we're doing up in Sheridan country.
Well, of course, Sheridan, it seems to just grow grass even maybe during a drought year. How are you guys looking so far this year?
Sheridan's we're looking pretty good. I've learned over the years coming to these stock growers conventions and other ag where you're with a big area of people. If you got dry problems in Sheridan County, just don't talk about it because we're in really good shape, honestly.
Well, we're glad to hear that. Well, next, let's pass the mic over to Jim Wilson. Jim, tell a little bit about your operation.
Well, I'm Jim Wilson, right east of Thermopolis. We run the V Ranch. I think I'm the fifth generation in our family. I have the sixth and seventh generation have joined the ranch, and we're experiencing a different situation, and not really a good way to bring in new members of the family, but we just went through the Red Canyon fire, and I think maybe we can discuss that later. But we run a cow-calf operation, raise our own replacement heifers. I had to reduce the herd by 1/3 because of the fire. And so we're experiencing a different situation in this. And sitting here beside Nate, and he's talking about the quality of grass. Well, while he's gone, I don't think he realized that I have truckloads of cows headed to his ranch. So anyway, we're all in this together, but looking forward to the rest of the conversation that we have here.
You bet. Well, Joe, how are things in Fremont County?
Oh, Fremont County's really good. We've had a really nice fall, beautiful winter. Really good cow prices. We're just waiting on the rain. We're a little dry. There's patches in Fremont County that's pretty good. Part of our whole operation in Fremont County relies on irrigation. We're pretty tight on irrigation water, so it's going to be one of them years that everybody's going to have to work together. And I still is positive the rain's coming. It's just going to be a little late.
Well, and I imagine in Fremont County, it very much depends on where you are, because what happens in Lander can probably look pretty different from Riverton.
That's very true. Lander, 11 days ago, got 7.5 inches of snow. I think we got less than a 16th at the ranch.
Wow. Well, I think one thing we wanted to get to here at the top, and of course, Nate already mentioned he's the chairman of the Young Producers Assembly, but it's always struck me how the Wyoming Stockgrowers Board of Directors always tries to engage those young members. And Nate, you stood up before the group this morning and kind of provided a little report on how the YPA is doing, and you've been around it for a long time here. Tell a little bit about the YPA and the role there.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, YPA started around 12 years ago. I was at the first meeting. It was at the Parkway Plaza in Casper at the December convention, and I was still at UW then. But anyways, so I've been a part of the YPA since then. A year and a half ago, I got chosen as president for this deal. My goal kind of with it has been just get more young people here. I can't tell somebody how good Stockgrowers is and how good they do things, but if we can just get them to the convention with a few fun activities, they can sit in on the committees and see for themselves the good and the policy making that the Wyoming Stockgrowers can do.
How much has it grown, thinking from that first meeting to where it's at today?
So typical meetings, even over the last 5 years, 6 years, we if we had 10 or 15, that was pretty darn good. 20 would be awesome. Last winter in Casper, 6 months ago, we had over 40 at our YPA meeting, nice, which was wild. Our room was not prepared for it. We brought in more chairs, and then people still had to stand because we couldn't put any more chairs on the ground. So that's a really good problem to have. And we hosted our own dinner away from the convention and had over 30 of them show up to that. And it was just good conversation and talking about industry stuff, but also just getting to know each other. So when you're in a big room with 100 people and you don't know anyone, you met that guy at dinner last night, I'll go sit and talk with him or whatever.
Yeah,
good stuff. What is some of those activities that you guys do have for those young producers? You know, you talk about it, that's one thing that draws them in, but what are some of those activities that you guys have them participate in while they're here?
So some we have coming up, it's going to be at the December convention. We're planning, it's nothing set in stone yet, but I think they're both going to happen. We're going to try to do an NFR watch party, maybe on that first night of convention or something, but on a big projector screen. Also, a past president of the Stockgrowers just cornered me in the hall a few hours ago and had an idea, and I love it. I haven't ran it by the rest of the YPA yet, but having a dance after the auction, getting a live band after the live auction and for a couple hours, and everybody can talk still, but if you want to get out there and dance and boogie, you can.
Absolutely.
Well, you've said it here on the air, so now you're kind of pot committed. You have to do it now. People
now
will
we're committed.
Expect you to. Well, Jim, I don't suppose you were a young producer when they first convened here, whatever Nate said 12 years ago, but why has it been a priority for the Wyoming Stockgrowers to foster the young producer group?
You know, being involved with Stockgrowers for years, it's kind of been a gray-haired convention. And I know when I was the president, I started looking around and seeing the quality young people that we had. And so I stepped out, and the president usually selects the committee chairs. And I reached out to a couple. Fearfully, I looked out and wondering how that would be accepted. I get home after those selections had been made, and I got a couple calls from old gray-haired people and said, good move. And it made me way more comfortable, and it's kind of just bloomed since then. And we knew we had them, but I had no idea that we would get 40, like you say you're going to have here. And so that was a great experience. And, you know, these positions take energy, and nobody's got more energy than the young people. And there's nothing like going and having the experience. And I'll tell you, when you sit down at a board meeting, you look around and you got to have a little bit of gray hair there, but you got to have the youth there for experience. And I think it's a great thing. We need this in all of agriculture, just not Wyoming Stockgrowers, but America-wide. And you look at the average age of people in agriculture, and you'd probably know, but I think it's about 64, and somewhere in that realm.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
And so we look forward to the young people. We as old-timers have to help them. There's different programs. You know, you think about building these ranches, and if we don't have the youth to do that and support them, however you do, financially through a family program or what, not just America, but the world's going to be in trouble.
Nate, go ahead. You had something.
I was just gonna add that I didn't realize that you were nervous when you started asking the younger folks to be the chairs and committee chairs. But how long ago was that?
You know, I hate to say that, but I'll bet it was 10 or 12 years ago. And I wasn't nervous with the young people coming in. I was nervous about the acceptance of the gray hair.
Well, it has taken off because without having the sheet in front of me, there's 9 committees, so there's 18 chairs and vice chairs. Over half of them are under 35, 40 years old.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So-
And Joe, from being on the board perspective, I know you're coming off here shortly, but it's not just a token idea of, we'll have a young producer group. I mean, Nate is actively involved on the board, and so is your vice chair, and so you're wanting those ideas.
I've been blessed. I will finish my 3-year term tonight. I'll be done. I've been really blessed. I can't talk enough about everything that the stock growers do, the opportunities that I've had, the knowledge that I've gained in different things. You know, it's like we got lots of good things happening in the stock growers as far as being at the table and a lot of things, getting the youth involved, succession planning. You know, the stock growers have sponsored Randy Tucker to come to Wyoming 3 times. We'll finish up in the western part of the state. That's real important for us, the youth. And then, you know, when you talk about the succession planning, how do we keep these agriculture in the family? And I think that's real important. And I think the Stock Growers has done just a wonderful job to try to help people do that, education. And I just really enjoy the guy they brought in. Everybody asked him, who would you go to for a lawyer? Who would you go? He wants no part of that. He just wants to get the family thinking, how do you want to do this? Really breaks you up in groups. I had an opportunity to attend it twice. Bring all your family. First time I got the boys all to come to town. Split you all up, different table, and it's pretty real. So a lot of good planning. And as far as, you know, talking about the stock growers, 3 years goes really fast. You know, I encourage anybody. We got a lot of producers that stay home, do nothing, let stock growers do all the work. I tell them, you better come help us or you're not going to have much to come home to because it's a moving target. We deal with lots of issues, you know. Nate talked about the 9 committees. You could talk for 10 hours on either one of them committees. It's just up in front today. So I encourage people to get involved and come join us.
Well, I'm glad you bring up succession planning, Joe, and I want to dig into that. But first, we've got to thank one of our sponsors, keeps us on the air here, of course, Nutrilix. Nutrilix liquid supplement is specifically formulated to provide the nutrients your cattle need to maintain good health and provide a returnable income on your investment, especially in these summer drought months. It's easier and cheaper to supplement grass now than it is to feed excess hay later, and Lord knows we're probably going to be feeding a lot of hay. But I'm glad you bring up the succession topic because I want to hear from each of you what that has meant on your ranch, because it's something that applies to every producer. And I heard a good quote. It was one of those guys that kind of leads those conversations. And I asked him, you know, what's the first step? And he told me the first step to succession planning is procrastinate. So put it off, and once you've got that done, you can check step 1 off, and then you can start the conversation like you mentioned, Joe. So maybe we'll start with you, Joe, of what that has meant for your place.
Oh, it means a lot to me. I'm on a 4th generation ranch that I'd like to see stay in the family. It means a lot to me as far as how you go about doing that. And, you know, through life, you go through a lot of different stages and planning and different things. But, you know, I think the biggest thing that it means to me is the opportunity for the next generation to have an opportunity to be on the ranch and to keep that where it's economically feasible. You know, when it was my time to come home to the ranch, there wasn't much to come home to. So we've really strived to make that opportunity for my boys to have a chance to come home.
Well, and it's a deeply personal issue, and I don't mean to pry, but I think it's an important thing that we get guys talking about and thinking about it. Jim, you said the 7th generation is on the ranch now?
Yes, and you know, I'm blessed that we have 1 daughter. And then we have 1 granddaughter, and that makes it easier to pass that down. But the plus is they want to be there, and we're working into that. And my wife and I were involved with my parents at one time, Then we split off and we started buying land, and we put a ranch together doing it that way. And there's different ways to do it. And I think you need to select a way to do it, but you can't start the day before you die. You got to plan early, and there's the advice of a good accountant and a good attorney can keep you out of a lot of trouble. I've seen too many ranches that they didn't really do anything. The kids got the ranch, and then they had to sell a portion of the ranch to pay the tax. And I don't think any of us like to pay tax, but if they do it right and start early, you can gift a lot of that ranch. And right now, with the present rules or regulations that they have, you can gift quite a bit every year. And so that makes a huge difference. But you got to start early and get a program, get them involved, and you can make it very successful for the next generation and the second one after that, if they want to be involved.
You bet.
Of course, Jim, last year, the one big beautiful bill included the repeal of the death tax, and there was a lot of things in there that were considered big wins for cattle producers, farmers, ranchers, you name it. But what was your experience with the one big beautiful bill and some of those provisions in there? How big were they for you and your operation?
Well, it made quite a bit of difference. And I don't think that most of America doesn't realize the value that we deal with. And there's a lot of land rich and cash poor individuals in agriculture. And, we used to talk about $1 million. That's a lot of money, but it's just a drop in the bucket. I mean, there's 20, 30, 40, 50, $60 million places out here that need to be dispersed to the next generation. So I think we have some people that are looking and thinking in bigger realms of how to do this. And we in Stockgrowers started this several years ago of helping educate our membership and the rest of the people in Wyoming in agriculture. This is a way to do this, or this is who to go see. So I think we've been a huge benefit to agriculture in Wyoming.
Well, Nate, I want to have your perspective because you're kind of at a different level of that succession planning. Your folks, Dave and Terry, are just thrilled that you're taking a larger role in the ranch, I'm sure. But you've already got to be thinking about, how do I get this into my girls' hands, and however many years that takes. But what has your family been
Yeah,
through?
for sure. I'm definitely on the other end of this from the other two guys here, but have been extremely lucky. So I have two older brothers. Both have great careers outside of ag, not on the family ranch. And so this was 5 or 6 years ago. My mom and dad were in the room with a lawyer and all three brothers, and we sat down and they discussed, hey, this is how it's going to be, and anybody have a problem with it? And we were all good, and me and my brothers still talk, and we get along great. Good. So there it can be done. And they just laid it out, and we know, and the gifting deal, we've started to do that some, as far as down to my generation. But yeah, I've started thinking already. I got 3 daughters, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but
Probably depends on son-in-laws a little bit.
maybe, who knows? Or these girls could just be the handier girls that you've ever seen.
It's possible. Entirely possible. Likely even.
But no, it's been a really good experience, though.
Well, we want to give folks an idea for the conversations that are happening here at the convention, and some of the breaking news has really got people's attention. Andy, yesterday we heard that New World screwworm had been confirmed in the U.S. We've been trying to keep it out for over a year and a half now, just confirmed in Texas yesterday. So that puts an undercurrent of uncertainty, but the market kind of quelled that uncertainty a little bit today.
It was an interesting thing. I mean, we heard the news break Wednesday night, and we thought, oh, Lordy. Monday, we saw the CME expand the limits or increase the limits on the cattle trading futures to $10.75 for the feeder cattle, an expanded limit of $16 after that, and thinking, holy cow, here comes the cliff. It's going to be a bloodbath when we get to work on Thursday morning. But then comes Thursday, and they just put the pedal to the metal and took it to they took it to the limit on the high end. I don't know if I can explain it. I don't know if I can add to that of why. I've heard several reasons that, it could be from the fact that this could mean that we could see less cattle. This could mean the fact that the traders were already bought into this, or they'd already sold off the contracts that they were long on already. So they were ready in case it did happen. And it's just a big surprise to see that the markets reacted the way they did and limit up day one of this big news.
Joe, do you feel that's a big talking point here, or is there's enough issues here at home? We're not worried about what's happening in Texas.
I think it's a real good talking point, and I think, the thing that we got to realize is it's not a public scare. as far as food safety. We have the safest food and really good inspection. We dropped the ball. We let another country own them facilities, and it'd take us a while to get them facilities back up and running. And I think with what we have, we got to manage it, and we just got to be real careful with the market that it's not a end of the world crisis. We got to manage it, and we got to ensure the people that the food is safe.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably going to be our biggest scare. I think we can manage it. We let our guard down. We gave another country our facilities. We never kind of took care of that. And, it's going to bite us. So, it's like when you play catch up at the ranch, year and a half. I mean, we'll have so many sterile flies that, yeah. And in Wyoming, we're kind of blessed because there's this little thing that calls winter.
You might be the first guy that called Wyoming winters a blessing. I don't know.
Well, but on that issue.
Yep, it certainly is. That was one of the funny things. We were branding earlier this week, and of course, we spray the aerosol insecticide when we castrate, and I noticed right there on the can it says for use for screwworms. So apparently we've been protecting ourselves for quite a while without even hardly realizing it. Well, thinking about the conversations happening here, Jim, I'm curious for your perspective on just the sentiments from producers. We talk about these challenges that are happening, but guys aren't down in the dumps. It may help to have, a limit up day on the board, but how would you characterize how people are feeling here at the convention?
Well, you got to realize that we're in the best cattle market that any of us have ever seen. And talking about this, I just made a decision on my own operation here. I've got a load of dry cows that are going to go to town. Well, my daughter and granddaughter are planning to take them right away because you got to remember, people have accepted beef. And we're a hamburger nation. We're running into the 4th of July. We're going to sell those cows more than we ever thought that we would. So, I think things are pretty good. And even though we're in a drought, some of us have been in a fire, we've reduced our numbers immensely. We're the lowest number of cattle we've had for, 60 or 70 years. And so things are pretty positive. And like I said, with the market, whoever thought we'd be selling $5 and $6 calves? And so that's a blessing. And so the attitude's pretty good. Now, our inputs have increased, but not to the extent the way the cattle market is raised.
Well, and it wasn't that long ago we were selling dry cows for 50 cents, and now it's not out of hand for one to bring $2.
It's exactly right. And, we keep talking about shortage of meat, shortage of cattle, but you think about what a fat steer weighed and processed at 1,200 pounds. There's a lot of cattle that are killing at 1,700 pounds now. With that, we got a better quality. You think of the increase in choice and prime made it better. And if you would go to the grocery store and just stand there and look around, and you'll see 2-3 younger ladies walk up there and they'll say, "Can we help you?" And they say, "Yes, is Joe back there?" And Joe will come out, he's back there cutting meat. And they say, what do you think, gals? They said, "Well, last week we were here and Joe, you cut us some steaks that were really good." And she said, "Would you like some more?" And he said, "We want them just like we had." They don't talk about price. They talk about quality. And when they have their friends over for the picnic on Friday night, they want them to say, "Boy, this is really good." Don't worry about the cost. It's the enjoyment.
Well, it's a good business to be in, to be able to provide that for people and have a product they love so much they don't care what it costs.
That's exactly like. You're not going to invite them over for a poor steak.
Certainly not going to invite them over for a boneless, skinless chicken breast. I mean, no one's going to come over for that, I don't think. Nate, I mean, what would you say to, a peer of yours back in Sheridan County? They're not a member. They don't come to the convention. They ask you, well, what happened there? What'd they talk about? What do you tell them?
Well, it's just the connections that you can make with people around the state. I've known you now for a good 15 years. You probably, you could say longer than that. No, and just the connections that you make with people and the phone calls when you got questions or whatever that you can. What's it like in Southwest Wyoming? It's about 10 hours away drive, but you got your connections and just everything that the speakers are. We're going to listen to the president of the NCBA here in a little bit and see what they're up to, and just all these committee meetings and all the work they're doing policy wise, and just it gets your knowledge of the entire industry increased.
Well, Jim teased it earlier, but I want you guys to share some of your recent experience with wildfire here in Wyoming, partly because it Might be something guys have to deal with again this year. But before I have you do that, we want to give a shout out to Western Ranch Supply. They are owned and operated, serving Montana and Wyoming and helping farmers and ranchers with quality products and trusted expertise for over 70 years now. They're trusted by generations because they're built by generations. So we appreciate Western Ranch Supply. But yeah, want to talk about wildfires, and not because it's something that really we want to be covering on the radio, and Andy and I have to talk about it, but it's an issue that continues to become more and more prevalent. And Nate, your family went through the elk fire 2 years ago this fall, is that right?
2 years ago. Yeah, it was on the Bighorns, and it really didn't get up top too much. It was a tick over 100,000 acres, if I remember right around that mark anyways. Mostly burned the face, which it needed it. It really did.
Yeah.
But wish it didn't happen when our cows were up there, and every other permittees too. To my knowledge, us or any other permittees that had their cattle up there didn't lose a single critter in the fire because of the fire.
Mm-hmm. What was that like when the fires started and you had cows up there? I mean,
yeah,
you got to get them off the mountain.
At first, we weren't too worried. We're actually kind of thinking this might be good. It might burn that stock drive off that we trail up and down that's all haired over, and it sure did.
Yeah.
But the communication with the Forest Service was okay. Dealing with them was a little difficult at times, but we got through it. And when we went up there the last day, we didn't know if we were going to order trucks to take them off the mountain this way towards Cody, or if we could get around it and trail them off. And we ended up trailing them off that evening, kicking them to the face anyways. But it was after the fire had burned across, and we weren't in crazy flames or anything like that. We weren't in danger. But it was an eye opener, because the fire needed to happen. I mean, it's Mother Nature. Mm-hmm. That fire did, but it was an eye opener for sure.
What's it been like afterwards now? I mean, have you been back up there?
I personally have been up there, but we actually haven't taken our cattle up there since. If we wanted to, we could have. We haven't needed it yet. The fences are still in disarray. This summer of 26, the fences are going to start going back in. And in our own personal luck situation, the year in 23, I believe it was, we leased our entire neighbor's ranch that's contiguous to us out northeast of town, and didn't buy any cows to stock it. So we had the extra grass, and that's what we've been doing the last a year in 25 and are doing this summer for 26. So that was on just a godsend that we had that in our pocket and hadn't stocked it fully yet.
Wow. Well, Jim, might have you share a little more about the Red Canyon fire. You're very much still in the recovery process.
We are. The fire, I think, started August 13th, and it started on some of our range, and it was in the lower country. On us, it burnt 30,000 acres, which is a total of 140,000 acres of the fire. We had a good plan of what we were going to do. We reduced our herd a third. We sold 300 cows last fall, and we can't complain. The market was exceptionally good, and the cows sold, and we've had a good plan made, and then we have this drought now. And so we typically do not feed a cow hay. We run out. We got good winter country, but we shipped all the cows out. I bought pasture up towards Worland, and we brought all the cows home in the 1st of March, and we've been feeding hay. We really don't even know how to feed hay. Cows don't like the hay. They like to be outside. But we fed cows till last Sunday, and now we're on our deeded country where the fire was, and we're having to sacrifice that because it would be way better off if we could let it rest. And typically our grass is really good this time of year, but with the drought, it's just fair. We have another ranch that we lease. We saved a lot of grass there to go to, and we don't have any water. And so it's making it pretty difficult. The only thing really saving us is I've put in about 300,000 feet of pipeline over the years. We have wells, and we've got everything running. We're checking it every day, running there, and we're trying to save our mountain as long as we can. Our mountain did not get burnt, but water shortage up there. Some of the creeks are drying up. We've never seen things like this. And so the cattle market is good. We're looking forward to that. But I'm telling you, we're looking for fall. We really are. And I'd like to say one thing about the screwworm is that it's too bad we didn't have this situation in August or September. Frost is really a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
And that would take care of a lot of our problems. But one thing about it, I don't think they're going to be bringing any cattle into Wyoming because of the drought. We might have cattle going that way. So, that modern transportation can have an effect on a lot of things. Things could be worse. We try to be optimistic, but it's good to be in the cattle business.
Yep.
we learn a lot coming to convention here from, like Nate said. I'd like to say one thing about Nate. His grandfather and I were really good friends, and he's got good genetics behind him, and I'm proud that he's sitting here with us and looking at the younger generation. But he's got one problem coming up.
Oh.
He's got 3 daughters, and he has no idea of what the problems are going to be. But I hope I'm around when they're 16, 17, 18 years old, and he will have gray hair. I'm telling you.
We were talking about that earlier. Yeah, and like you said, with the New World screwworm, there's a lot of vectors that these flies can easily get north, and it's scary to think about that. It's in the U.S. now, and its potential to come into Wyoming is possible. But like you said, hopefully the winter comes before the flies do, so we don't have to worry about that. Going back to the fire, though, what would you say is like some of the message to some of these other producers? Because we're likely going to see some fires this year, as dry as it is. What's your message to some of those producers, maybe to prepare for a wildfire or after the wildfire? What's your message to those guys?
The plus to us at the fire is quite a bit of it was federal land. It was most of our winter country, and we have an extremely good BLM range con. She's working with us. She's one of us, and she happens to be a native of Grayville, Wyoming, and that's a plus. We lost a tremendous amount of fence. We lost 30 miles on us, and the FSA stepped up and participating, and it's taken quite a bit of money at $26,000 a mile. And the contractors that have came in, I had no idea there was that many fence contractors, but there's been a tremendous amount of fence built. And we had a nice early spring, and they were in there when we should have had snow on the ground. But that was the plus, that fence was being built. One thing about it is, if you think you're going to have a fire, getting material. We went to all metal, all pipe, all steel posts. We have one wood gate stick in the whole fence, but they tell me that getting 2 7/8 pipe is tough to find, and it got expensive really quick. Yep. So we lucked out and bought a lot last fall and was prepared, but some of them are having trouble.
Nate, I might take this question to you. Talking about the preparation of wildfires. Of course, we're here, and virtual fencing is kind of becoming a thing. I mean, I know Jim and Joe and folks of your generation are starting to utilize it too, but we're really seeing it in the next generation, this virtual fencing, and you don't have to worry about rebuilding a fence after a wildfire. What's your experience with virtual fence with your guys' operation?
We're not currently using any. Sure. I think I'm super intrigued by it, and I've listened to lots of talks on it. But as far as building permanent fences, I'm just going to use forest allotments as an example. Your boundary fences, I think you still would have to, because that you can't force your neighbor to have the collars too. You know what I mean? Yep. So those, you're always going to have to get that exterior up. At Jim, did you say 26,000 a mile? That's absurd. Wow. But I think the possibilities with the virtual collars are, I wonder what it's going to look like in 5 years. I mean, this has all kind of started in my mind in the last 3, 4, 5 years. What it's going to look like in another 5, I don't know. What you can do with them
comes fast.
Yes, it does. Yep. I wish we were using it, but we haven't started yet. But I bet someday in the next 10 or 15 years, I bet 80% of cattle producers are going to be on something like that. That's just a guess.
Wow. Well, Joe, I want to mention Wyoming Stockgrowers' role in this wildfire recovery, because the association stepped up and provided a vehicle for people to give and support folks in that recovery effort, and unfortunately had to do it 2 years in a row, obviously. Talk about that decision from the board level to say we have to do something to help these guys.
I think that's one of the best decisions the Stockgrowers did, is to create that fund and try to help the people and different things. And it's just amazing. It just shows you the place that we live when somebody needs some help, how other people help people. And I think the people that help, thank them. And the Stockgrowers was instrumental of trying to do that pass-through money and have a place. There's a lot of people that want to help. And we, got it organized and got it put together. And I think it was something that we can really be proud of.
I think so. Makes a big difference, and because people want to give in that time, but you have to be able to capitalize on it now, because when you're ready to start rebuilding fence, Well, it's not on top of people's minds anymore. You got to have a vehicle to give and then a vehicle to get it out to the people that need it. So hats off to the Wyoming Stockgrowers. And we're getting kind of towards the end here. We want to go back around. I want to ask these guys about what they're excited about and concerned about in the cattle industry. But first, we want to thank our last sponsor here, Two Gun Apparel. At Two Gun Western Apparel, the roots of cowboying runs deep in every hat or garment they make that leaves the shop in Joliet, Montana. Whether it's new Western trends or custom design clothing, Two Gun Western is your go-to source for high-quality, locally made apparel. Visit twogunwesternapparel.com to order your new styles today. Andy Cameron said he might be willing to make us some vests, so we're pretty high on Two Gun Apparel right now.
You know how I love a vest. I wear vests almost every day, so I'm excited when I heard that.
Andy Schwab will wear a vest if it's 90 degrees. He does not care.
Make it 100. I'll still wear it.
Well, we're on our last segment here, but I warned these guys I was going to ask them these questions because I'm just curious for how you perceive it. So, Joy, I might start with you, but what keeps you up at night when you think about the cattle industry, this business, the association, your ranch? I mean, what are you concerned about in this business?
Oh, you don't have enough time.
Okay.
The thing that keeps me up at night is I can go to bed and different thing. Tomorrow's a good day. I mean, we could worry about a lot of things. I just think I'm really optimist about the other side of that. Probably the best time in my life that we're going to see the grazing regulations changed, a lot of reorganization where we run on federal ground most of the time. At the ranch. So, I mean, real exciting times, a lot of different partnerships, different things. We're going to try to handle some things a whole different way we're not, when they switch administration, we just do executive order and we're back. We've worked really hard to make some changes. I'm really positive about how that's going to come out. I think we got everybody at the table at the right place. We got the right people in Washington that is from Wyoming that's steering the BLM. That really looks good. And to be honest with you, probably my biggest concern staying up is the drought. We've cut down a bunch. It's one of them things that I think you got to have that in your management plan. And, it's kind of like doing the succession. You just have to do it. We kept 100 cows in, stayed in a whole month, said, are we going to sell them? We going. We said we're going, So you have to make them decisions and go with it. So, in agriculture, you just got to really stay positive. And, we don't get a lot of wins in agriculture. And I think we're going to have some really big wins with the federal agencies, different things, getting some things that I've worked on for 20 years that's never been solved, that I think we'll see some closure to some of that.
Well, that certainly is positive news, and that those things happen because producers like yourself lean in, show up at these meetings, help develop that grassroots policy. Jim, I'll pass it to you next. Well, what keeps you up at night?
Well, there's two sides of the bed, the positive and the negative. And personally, I get up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning a lot. And I think it's because I wake up thinking about something. But, there's a lot of positives. And you just look around and you look here at Nate beside the young people there. I don't know if people realize that females are 30-some% of agriculture, are owners of agriculture. It seems like they seem to be the goers. It's good to see. And in my operation, I'm a minority.
That's true.
And it's good to see those people, the young ladies stepping up. And I really mean it by ladies. Just because they have their boots and hat on, they're still ladies. So, that's a really positive thing. The other thing is, and I might mention it, we had a tour on our ranch yesterday. And what it was is for the press, but also all the agencies that we deal with are super positive. They came to us. If it's the BLM, the FSA, NRCS, Public Lands Council, the Game and Fish, we're all in this together. And there's been an attitude change. And, when we lose agriculture in America, we've lost America. I think that is really, really positive. And, you come to convention here and you think about all the people that you deal with and what are they doing. There's no better place to learn than right here. So I think there's way more positives. It is going to rain again. And the first that some will say is it's too wet or it's too muddy or I couldn't get there.
Yeah.
And, and I really enjoyed the group yesterday. And I had a disagreement with the lady that was the sponsor of that. And I said, she ordered a really nice day for yesterday. And I said, well, I disagree because I ordered rain. And so she promised to bring me that rain, and we had a beautiful day. So there's a lot of positives out there.
Wow, what a great thing to do, to be able to tell your story, share that experience. Thank you for taking the time to do that, Jim. Nate, I already know what keeps you up at night. We've said you got 3 young girls. That's what's keeping you up at night. But.
Well, that would be the answer for my wife. I'm a pretty hard sleeper, but
at least you're honest.
I can get up and change a diaper. But I'm gonna switch to the what makes me excited. I'm gonna take the really easy answer this year. That would be cattle prices.
You bet.
But on the caveat to that, I agree with what Jim was saying earlier about the quality, and that's what the consumer, they care about the quality. But at some point, will the cattle prices outrun the consumer? If a steak costs $400 tomorrow, I don't think the consumers are going to buy any steaks. I'm not saying there will be a point, and that it's just concerning. I want to be an optimistic person, and it's hard not to be with these prices that are here this summer. But that's just a concerning. I don't know what the answer is. I want the prices to continue to go up, just like everybody else. But what's the point going to be that the price does outrun the consumer? Just something to think about.
Well, I think it's a good point. At some level, we do test this demand. I think Jim made a great point that the quality is so good, people have continued to buy it. So we don't know what the top is, but it's there somewhere. So that's a great point, Nate. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of the show. I appreciate you guys taking the time with us and sharing some of your personal stories. Final thoughts, final words. Andy, anything from you?
You know, it's just great to see, like you guys all said, how many producers make their way to these conventions, whether it's in Cody, Wyoming, or whether it's in Cheyenne or Evanston or Gillette, or it's in the center of the state in Casper. There's a lot of miles between home ranches and where these conventions happen. So at $5 diesel, it's not easy to make the trek every year to these conventions. But like you guys said, you got to be here to make your voice heard, to make sure that policy's right. So when you go to the Wyoming legislator, when you go to the national legislator, that policy that's made and that's being lobbied on by some of these organizations, that it's the policy that you guys need. And by doing that is by showing up here. And Wyoming Stockgrowers, I think, is just always in a great mood, it seems like, and very optimistic no matter what adverse effect is happening to them. So I love being here and love being with my fellow Wyomingites.
Well, very last question. Joe, is an outgoing board member. Why does a producer need to be a member of the Wyoming Stockgrowers?
Every reason. Why do you need to be a member? I think you got to get out from the ranch and do a lot of different things. I could talk about whether it be legislation, policy, everything that's affected all the different programs, the people that you meet, the connections. There's lots of reasons that people need to come. And, I'll close with, even if you don't want to come to convention or whatever, we'd like you to be a member. A lot of people don't like to leave the ranch, but we need a lot of help. So we need the support for the membership, and we can continue to do the work that we're doing.
And Jim, you can do that by helping out the Ag Pack raffle.
I'd be glad to do that. But I would like to say that Wyoming Stockgrowers represents every ag producer in Wyoming. And if they're a member or they're not, and they need to step up, support. If you disagree with something that they do, come to the table.
That's well said. Well said. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our listeners for joining us as well. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Next Year Country. Next week, tune in. We're going to have Kyle Schwab from Lewistown Livestock Auction on and talk about the upcoming video sale season, Corn Belt Classic, just a little bit away. So thanks much for joining us, folks. We'll see you down the road.